What if I told you one of the biggest lies the spiritual industry ever sold us was that there was something wrong with you? That you needed to heal more, grow more, release more, go to the next level, fix more, become someone else before you were worthy of peace. Now, to be fair, I think the spiritual world is beginning to wake up to this. There are more and more books that are being written, and there's more podcasts where people are talking about it. There's more teachers that are finally saying, you're not broken. And I couldn't agree more. But I think we're missing an even bigger question. How did so many of us come to believe we were broken in the first place, self included? Because we weren't born believing that. No baby enters this world thinking, I'm not enough. No child comes into this life believing they're unworthy of love. Somewhere along the way, we learned it. And today, I want to talk about how that may have happened. Because I don't believe we need to fix ourselves. I think we need to simply change the perspective that convinced us we needed fixing in the first place. Hello, and welcome back to Divine Angelic Guidance, where spirituality meets midlife rediscovery. I'm Michelle Irene Stupsky. I am your host and author. And if this is your first time here, welcome. I'm so grateful that you've joined me. And if you've been listening for a while, thank you for walking this beautiful journey with me. It's been more than my honor to do so. But before we begin, if these conversations encourage you, inspire you, or simply remind you that you're not walking this journey alone, I'd be so grateful if you'd click the follow button wherever it's provided on your favorite listening platform. It really does help these platforms know that this podcast is reaching the people it's meant to reach. And if someone comes to mind while you're listening today, I'd love for you to share this episode with them. You never know how one conversation might become the turning point for exactly what someone else needed to hear. This podcast has always been about helping you reconnect with your inner wisdom through spirituality, angelic guidance, and the everyday moments that quietly shape our lives. Not by giving you all the answers, but by offering guidance that helps you discover your own. All right, let's begin with this brand new podcast series. And this one's called The Lies the Spiritual Industry Sold Us. Before we go any further, I want to be really clear, though. This is not an attack on spirituality. Spirituality changed my life. It helped me navigate my adoption story, loss of my parents, grief, motherhood, menopause, uncertainty, purpose, and ultimately led me back to the woman that I had always been beneath the roles that I carried. What I want to talk about isn't really spirituality per se. It's the messages that sometimes become attached to it. Messages that sound true, messages that are often shared with good intentions, but messages that can quietly convince us that we're somehow falling behind, not doing enough, or we're just simply not enough. And I think many of us, especially in midlife, are finally beginning to question those messages that have been thrown our way because something inside us says, there has to be a better way or another way. And I believe there is. One of the first messages I absorbed was this: healing is about fixing yourself. And I didn't hear anyone say those exact words, but that was the message beneath it all. Find your wounds, find your blocks, find your limiting beliefs, heal your inner child, heal your past lives, heal your ancestral patterns, heal your relationships, your nervous system. Heal, heal, heal. Okay, I'm not a dog, but hear me out. I absolutely believe in healing. I've dedicated much of my life's work to helping people heal. But healing and believing you're broken are not the same thing. Healing is a return to your true nature, the essence of who you are. Healing helps you to say, I love myself enough to care for the places that hurt, that now I'm going to take a closer look. Believing you're broken says, I'll finally be enough once I've fixed everything that's wrong with me. Those are two completely different paths. One is rooted in love, the other is rooted in fear. And I think many of us unknowingly stepped onto the second path. We became projects instead of people. We started measuring our spiritual growth by how much more work there was left to do. I'm so behind, I hear not only my clients saying this, but myself as well. As though peace was always waiting just beyond the next breakthrough, the next retreat, the next clarification, the certification, the coach, the awakening, the healing. And before we knew it, we were exhausted, if not overwhelmed. Not because spirituality is exhausting, but because trying to earn our worth always is. Years ago, I attended a week-long conference led by a very well-known spiritual leader. She was a New York Times bestseller author. And before the conference even began, we were asked, what did you come here for? What are you hoping to gain from this week together? And I remember I opened up my journal and I wrote one simple intention. I want to feel supported. And looking back, I think what I was really saying was, I want someone to just see me. And midway through the week, during one of the sessions, something inside me cracked open. I think you may know that term. I sobbed, not graceful tears, not a few tears rolling down my face. I mean that deep, soul level, ugly, sobbing cry. And the people sitting beside me quietly asked if I was okay, and I thanked them, and the session was ended, and everyone walked out. And I still sat there sobbing alone. No one from the support team came in. No facilitator checked in. No one simply sat beside me. And for years, that experience stayed with me. Not because I expected anyone to rescue me, but because it taught me something. Somewhere along the way, we'd become so fascinated with the breakthrough that we'd forgotten about the human being having it. We celebrate the crack, but who's there to hold the person while they're opening? That experience changed my work. And I remember repeating to myself over and over and over again, how can we get from point A to point B without having to crack open? Something I wrote about in my book, Flying Free. It's called the solution activation process, but that's not what today is about. But if someone has a difficult emotional moment during one of my retreats or a coaching session, they will never be left alone. Not because I can fix them, because I can't. No one can. But I can hold space while they remember the strength that has always lived within them. And that's very different. That's why my latest book was written, to feel like you are being seen, heard, supported, and held. I think this message becomes especially important in midlife because this is the season when so many women begin asking, who am I now that the roles have changed? And who am I without constantly taking care of everyone else? Who am I when I stop trying to prove my worth? The world often tells us this is the season to reinvent ourselves. Who am I after I've retired and I feel as if my purpose is now gone? My relevance in society has disappeared. I think it's the season to simply remember ourselves, to return to the woman who existed before fear, before comparison, and before people told us who we should become, how we should do things. I'm not just talking about the spiritual community in this aspect. I'm talking about media, magazines, social, TV, news, newspapers. If anybody still gets a newspaper, it's everywhere you look, or being told how to dress, how to eat, how to do our hair, how to wear our handbags. Like recently, I just saw somebody post a crossbody bag can't be a crossbody. It's got to hang on your shoulder because if you do the crossbody, then you're old. What's that all about? And who are you that made this up? And why is everybody listening and following? I think that's the bigger thing here. Why are we following and listening to all of this misguided ridiculousness? And that's why my book is called You Weren't Born to Fit In, because you weren't. Let's be honest. How many of us have tried to fit into a mold or fit into a certain group, and then we leave, or when we're done, we're just like, we don't fit. Where do I belong? And you certainly weren't born believing there was something wrong with you. You learned that somewhere. And if it was learned, it can be unlearned. This is why divine angelic guidance is so important to me. I don't believe our angels spend their time pointing out our flaws. I don't believe they're standing beside us, pointing their finger, going, try harder, heal faster, become more, do more. I believe they're whispering something entirely different. You are loved. We're still here. Keep going. Remember who you are. That's guidance, not criticism, not shame, not performance. Just love, quiet, steady, unconditional love. And perhaps that's what we've needed all along. Not another reason to believe we're broken, but another reminder that we never were. And as we begin this series together, as I bust through the myths of some of the blankety blank that we've been sold, I want to invite you to listen with curiosity. Not because I'm asking you to believe everything I say, quite the opposite, actually. I'm inviting you to think, to question, to notice which beliefs genuinely brought you closer to yourself and which ones may have quietly pulled you away. Because discernment is a beautiful spiritual practice. And I talked about that in depth about discernment in Protecting Your Peace episode, which was the episode right before this. So take a listen to that one if you want to learn more. Next week, we're going to continue this conversation with episode 2 of The Lie, Someone Else Has Your Answers. We'll talk about guru culture and why I never felt called to build my work around mediumship and the difference between guidance and dependency. And why I believe authentic spiritual leaders aren't here to give you your answers. They're here to help you trust your own connection with the divine. Until then, I want you to remember this. Someone is always with you, watching over you, guiding you. You are never alone. Until next time, take gentle care of yourself, keep your heart open, and allow yourself to remember the beautiful soul that you have always been.